On this episode of the show, I have with me Emily Ellis. She is Chief People Officer at DriveWealth, and we're going to be talking about being compassionate when you have to do hard things. And we're going to dive into a few areas. You have to obviously build a very scalable program first and foremost, and every decision does matter. And sometimes things don't go well, and you have to adjust. You have to communicate. And you have to tell everyone how you're going to fix it, address it, or deal with it. And sometimes that is not always easy. And we'll ask Emily how she handles that. And we'll talk a little bit about balancing, when people join a startup and kind of want that risk, the ability to grow, and as well, a little bit of taking that, hopefully swing at the big payout, but always doesn't work out. And how do we communicate some of that to the team and make sure everyone is understanding and aware of what's happening in an organization, good or bad? Emily, thanks for taking the time to cover this with us.
Of course, even just hearing you talk about these subjects, I'm smiling because these are things that I love talking about. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Before we start, can you tell everyone what you guys do at DriveWealth?
Sure. DriveWealth is a global fintech B2B business that was founded around this concept of democratizing investing. And these are now buzzwords that I feel like are thrown around a lot, but our founder, Bob Courtwright, really was passionate about this, and our business really started around the concept of fractional trading. But today, like I said, we operate around the world. We partner with other fintechs, with banks, with consumer brands, and allow these other organizations to embed investing tools within their tech stack, and so that they are able to offer their customers and consumers the opportunity to trade in ways that they didn't have, in their fingertips before.
Absolutely. All right. So this topic, I do agree, we don't talk about it enough. So this is a good one to talk about, and it might be timing's good as well, because I know things have been rough in the recruiting world the last couple of years, coming off the backs of fantastic times as well. So when we talk about being compassionate when you have to do hard things, that doesn't mean just hard times. It's just hard things, correct?
Correct. For sure.
What are some examples? And I guess this is just for context for everyone. When you consider a hard thing, it'd be good to kind of put some words to what that thing might be. What are some things that are typically viewed as difficult discussions, hard things that are complicated that you've got to deal with?
For sure. So, there's the day-to-day things like giving someone feedback, telling someone who spent so much time working on a project or bringing something to light. You kind of missed the mark here, and here's why. That's not something I would categorize as easy, but I think it's all about your perspective. And I truly believe that feedback is a gift. Telling someone what they want to hear, while that may feel good and is certainly easier in the moment, you're doing them and yourself a disservice, and it will likely lead to a much harder thing down the road. So that's the the easier of the hard things, if you will. Bigger picture hard things are having topics about budgets, like what can we afford to do next year, and prioritizing and having to say all of these things are worthwhile, but what is the most important thing to our business, which ultimately means you are going to likely have to disappoint someone. The other thing, of course, that I think anyone in our space has dealt with over the last, let's call it 3 to 5 years, is having to make decisions around headcount, whether it be from a cost perspective or because, listen, we were really investing in this area at one point. And again, we are now having to shift gears. Our priorities have changed. And so making decisions about employees, that is definitely a hard thing. But something I think about often, you touched on this a little bit, but is leading and doing hard things with compassion. That doesn't make it any easier necessarily, but it ensures that you are putting the person first. I think there's a misconception that you have to be either profits first or people first. And I don't think that's the case. I think you can do everything with compassion, and it helps ensure you are putting people first, even in less than desirable circumstances.
And absolutely. And maybe we'll jump. I know we're going to talk about a few things, but maybe we're going to jump a little bit further and talk about hiring, because I do know from our conversation, you have some philosophies around, it's a lot easier to hire than fire. But also before that, I think there's a quiet part about the employer-employee contract that we really don't talk about. It's an area that I don't think anyone really covers on podcasts. So
Yeah.
figure I'll be the guy, I'll be that person. And it's this delicate conversation of we want you to come work for us because you're passionate. As long as the business is doing well, our goal is to keep you here, keep you working, keep you employed. But when things aren't good, we might not have a choice because obviously, if the business is not making money, doing well, I mean, you can't keep people on, and it is a very delicate part of that relation. And I consider it not a contract, a relationship, but that relationship is so delicate, and that balance is so sensitive. But also, in the right dynamic, that bond is so strong that people will be willing to do anything to stay because they enjoy that relationship. I guess talk to us about this, maybe this quiet part that we don't talk a lot about, this relationship. It's yeah. I'm gonna let you kind of talk about that relationship and we'll dive into some particulars.
Sure. So I think, oh, goodness, this is a very big question. I mean, as you stated, the relationship between an employer and an employee is based upon a couple of fundamental things. But the foundation is at the core of it is this relationship still working? And that's a two-way street. Is the employer still meeting the needs of the employee and providing an opportunity to fulfill a role to support the business's goals and mission, and of course, providing things that are outlined in that contract, your pay, again, a safe and supportive environment, benefits, anything else that is outlined there. But also on the other side of it, the employer is saying, are you performing as expected and as outlined in the job that is put in front of you? And also, is there still the need for this here? And I think those are like that synergy has to be there. And any workplace is such a dynamic environment where, especially in a fast-paced world like what DriveWealth is operating in, things change all the time. And I think that that's why it's really important when you're hiring to think about not only what are the needs we are bringing this person on board to meet today, but are those needs going to be the same or even similar 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now? And if we anticipate they'll change, that's okay. But A, have we been really upfront with this employee that, listen, DriveWealth changes all the time. And so are you okay with change? Because know that things will change. And secondly, are you going to be able to evolve? And is your skill set such that you are able to evolve with the company as that role kind of ebbs and flows?
Yeah, and absolutely. And you mentioned, I guess philosophically, you align towards, it's easier to hire than it is to fire. I think but try to hire slow, fire fast. I think a lot of times in startups we see hire fast, fire fast, just because that's the pace of a business. Is that a per company cultural thing? Is it just pure strategy? Because obviously, if someone's listening, they're like, well, my startup's moving really fast. We have to hire a lot. And I guess that could be true as well.
Yeah, listen, I think that it depends on the nature of the business and the needs of the business. And even within DriveWealth, we have had situations where we've said, okay, we need to get, let's call it, amazing engineers in the door now. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring in a partner to help us. We're going to have super days. I'm happy to go into detail about all of these things too, which if you're a talent nerd like us, they probably do mean something to you. But yeah, there's always going to be a need to move quickly. But whatever the pace, whatever the need, there needs to be strategic thinking there. Like, are we being reactive? Excuse me. And it's okay to be reactive if you have an understanding of what you are reacting to. And if that need, again, is going to be something that 1 month, 3 months, 6 months from now, you're thinking, okay, that need still exists. I think there are also processes and things that you can do ahead of time that kind of allow you to move fast with that peace of mind knowing, okay, we did our due diligence on the front end. And, that is things like making sure you're putting together really thorough job descriptions. Something we started doing in the last 6 months is not only doing job descriptions that we think are really well thought out, but putting together, okay, if we fill this role, what are we going to expect this person to do in 30, 60, and 90 days? Because if we can't work with the hiring manager to put that on paper and say, this is what success for this new hire looks like early on, then we probably don't have a good understanding of what this person is going to do to be successful. And maybe we should go back to the drawing board a little bit. The other thing that I, as a hiring manager and someone who's often brought in to be on interview panels, do is I believe in radical honesty in this front, because again, I think I've worked at a lot of startups or startup like cultures in my career, and I personally love the pace, and I like the fact that it's dynamic and always changing, but that's not for everyone. And so I try to really emphasize, listen, like these are characteristics that I think help someone be successful here, or the types of people that we think do really, really well in this environment. And so then someone is fully able to make an informed decision about, okay, this is A, what I'm walking into, and B, what I can expect working at DriveWealth.
Absolutely. I guess, and I actually appreciate the thoughts around that and the views. And when you are thinking about, and this might be a question to hiring managers, because hiring managers always do have that urgency. And, in a fast-paced, changing, dynamic, you sometimes are left no choice. Like there is a need, and this team does need to scale. This team needs to do that. This team needs to do this. What have you seen help in terms of going back to the manager to really make sure that the urgency is defined the same, right? Because I think sometimes hiring managers, they are under the pressure to deliver whatever piece of work they have to.
Yeah.
So they have a certain specific definition of what that urgency means and impacts them. You, as the chief people officer, also have a certain definition of urgency in terms of how you think the team should move or how quickly a team should respond for that need. That's not always the easiest to translate. What have you seen work, or have you seen anything that helps?
Yeah. I mean, you put it beautifully. The hiring manager is under their own set of pressures usually from a delivery standpoint. I'm under the pressure and feel a sense of obligation to our stakeholders to ensure we're, investing money in the best way possible. And so I think there is a way to ensure that all needs are met. To your point, there's anybody who is in a senior people role knows there's a million priorities you're dealing with on any given day. And if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. And so I think it's helpful to come in from that holistic standpoint that the people team often can, and say, okay, have you thought about if you have someone on your team that can really step up to the challenge and maybe fill this gap for now, and we can see, a month or two down the road, okay, maybe the need's a little different. Maybe we thought we needed this level, but we actually need someone junior who can support this person and help them up level their work. Or have you thought about hiring into this position we have offices around the world. So have you thought about maybe it makes sense to actually hire this person overseas, because then they'll be able to work an off hour. Like it's a lot of asking questions, and I think offering up suggestions on how they can maybe think about the problem differently. And listen, like more often than not, we decide, okay, no, this is actually a need, and maybe we tweak it a little bit, but at least, again, we're all going into it and making really fully formed decisions.
Absolutely. I guess, to kind of circle back to having that compassion when you have to do hard things, one of the hardest things is obviously having to lay people off. Yeah, everyone says you have to deliver that with compassion. It is hard because you are severing that relationship. And interestingly, I don't know if this is factual. My view or my observation is when an employee leaves on their own volition, there tends to be less of that need because they're leaving and you're left backfilling. But when you let the employee go, that's something that has a very adverse reaction typically, or unless there's been some warning provided. I guess when you think about having that compassion, it's never an easy conversation, and your position's a little harder because you're not always delivering that news. It might be a hiring manager, the actual manager, responsible for delivering that news. How do you help the team deliver with compassion? Because realizing you're not going to be everywhere at once. So how do you work with the team to make sure that they understand the level of compassion you might be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about people here, and you touched on this even with the comments on the agreement. Yes, decisions are not made from a personal standpoint, and I think it helps to keep that in mind. Um, that said, it's a very personal experience to both the person delivering the news, but more than that, the person on the receiving end. And so I think it's important to get people information as soon as possible. I always tell people, listen, like, we're going to lead with, this is happening, this is really hard, but let us tell you what we're going to do and what you can expect today and for the subsequent days that will follow. Because of course, if you're hearing that I'm losing my job, you go into, it's a trauma, and you go into a little bit of crisis mode. And so it's getting people information. I truly believe that giving people tools and transparency is the best thing you can do for them. And then giving time to digest. We support people who leave our company through career transition services to ensure that, we're doing everything possible to help them land on their feet. The other thing on a personal note that I keep in mind and try to, act with this as well is careers are long, and the world is very small. And so doing what you can to say, listen, like, obviously it's a case by case situation, but this position either no longer made sense, or our needs changed, or you weren't meeting the expectations we had for this role. But again, like this, there are other ways to help someone, and be a referral, or make that connection for someone if the opportunity presents itself and it's an appropriate move.
Absolutely. I love that. That's well said. And I guess maybe as a example in another area, because I know we talked about hiring and hiring and firing a bit on the episode, and you mentioned some other areas where you have to have compassion. Is there another example that you could walk us through where what you've seen work for a particular sensitive topic?
Sure. I mean, I would say a sensitive topic. Maybe this isn't a sensitive topic, and maybe it shouldn't be sensitive at all, but I think something that's really important to every leader at DriveWealth is inclusion. We are a company that really is intentional about making sure that anyone who does join our company feels included. And not just included in meetings or, in lunches or whatever, but like welcomed and celebrated for being who they are. Again, our people are the best thing about DriveWealth. I think we have amazing products and an amazing mission, but the people are what make me excited to show up every day. And building and celebrating a diverse workforce is really important to me and to our leadership team. And so, the world is a crazy place. And so when we know that we have employees who are navigating difficult circumstances, or maybe they are dealing with a particularly stressful time, ensuring that as appropriate, we are supporting them through that. And then just in the day-to-day, making sure we're celebrating people and the cultures that are important to our people, in big and small ways.
Absolutely. I do think this part of your job as you know as chief people officer, these are difficult cultural things to look at because they're not the part of the job that anyone really wants to ever have to look at. There might be a down period, obviously, in a fast moving startup. As you said, it's inevitable. There might be some peaks, valleys as you go through that. As a chief people officer, and you are looking at your entire program, do you plan, not that you plan for bad things to happen, that's not the question, but do you have a sense of as you're going through the various cycles of growth and contraction and whatnot, do you start planning in your head mentally just for your own self of areas that you need to be cognizant of, that when they come up, they need to be prepared, they need to be understood? Like you don't want to spur the moment and figure out this is how I'm going to deliver this news. Do you go through that kind of just dry runs in your own mind?
So I'm laughing because I am accurately called an eternal optimist
Love
in
it.
my personal and professional life, but I think you can be an optimist and still be a realist. So I wouldn't say I plan for bad things to happen. I think that I am a realist about what it takes to operate a venture-backed company. And we have very big goals at DriveWealth, which means we can't just really, operate willy-nilly. We have to plan for various scenarios that could take place, but not only because of what's going on in our company, but what's going on in the environment that we operate within. That said, something that I'm really proud that my team and I think do a really good job of is we try and think about, okay, you know what? This is probably going to come up. We should document this or come up with a process around this. We're a hybrid workforce. And so we have people often who say, I'll give you an example. I'd like to travel abroad and work from this foreign country so I can spend some time with my family. What will that look like? And so it's thinking about, okay, what are the tax implications of this? What are the InfoSec implications of this? Like, do we need to let's come up with a process to make sure that someone is still able to do the duties that they are expected to fulfill while maybe in a different time zone. And so that is a very specific example, but something that we say, okay, let's use this as an opportunity to really get buttoned up in our processes. And so we're consistent and have protocols in place to not only support our employees, but protect our business.
I love it. I love being an eternal optimist. So I approach that question slightly with a different view because I'm not a pessimist, but I'm definitely not an internal optimist. So I like how you viewed the job and your overall viewpoints as well. I was going to say thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing with everyone. I know probably did not get every question somebody wanted me to ask answered. If somebody does have a follow-up, what's a good way of connecting and maybe asking you something?
Sure. They can find me on LinkedIn, Emily Ellis at DriveWealth. I am happy to connect with them. And they can check out the DriveWealth website or shoot me an email. I'm always happy to connect with people. I am very much a people person, kind of comes with the job.
Absolutely. Emily, thanks again for being on.
Of course, I loved this conversation. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for the episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think talking about some of the difficult stuff is important. Emily shared fantastic views, examples, how she deals with obviously with the hiring and firing cycle, and she is an optimist. So she kind of is a realist and balances the two, which I think is really healthy. I've got a couple of things that I'm going to take away from that conversation as well. Please share this episode with somebody that might benefit from it. That'd be fantastic. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.